Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual NBA Fanatic podcast. Now, last week's been pretty fun. We've had multiple championship contender matchups. Obviously, we had Cleveland, Detroit, OKC, Detroit, San Antonio, Detroit. We've had the Knicks and the Cavs face off as well. We've had Boston face off against a few teams like Denver. We've had OKC and Denver once again. So there's been some great matchups that we've been, drilled in with, and a few matchups that we can take obviously with a bit of a grain of salt as well, but as we look towards what the postseason may throw at us. But a video that I released last week, which I wanted to kind of cover, is just a bit of a fun topic. Again, we are in the mid-season trough of the NBA right now, but I want to go through what I think to believe are the three most underrated MVPs of the 21st century. Now, with this one, I just listed my three straight off the bat, and it really isn't in order, but more or less, I think it's pretty easy to make up the order as you go. When we talk about underrated, we're kind of just talking about overlooked, understated, or where a lot of criticism is thrown at that MVP award winner. People thinking they didn't deserve it for their time. And I think there's one MVP that will stick directly in your mind when you think about the NBA media around 21st century MVPs, and who you think was very much disrespected for winning that award. And then there's someone in here I believe didn't get enough credit for just how dominant he was in that year. And that trend is more or less the same for the third guy that I had on that list. Now, to start, we'll just go into the most underrated and disrespected MVP, in my opinion, probably in NBA history. And that is Steve Nash. Now, when we talk about Steve Nash, a lot of people who probably didn't get to witness him play, and I wasn't alive to watch him play, but I've watched a ton of film of Steve Nash back in his time as well, and I can see the impact that he brought in such a suffocated posts era in the NBA. And with Steve Nash, most of the surrounding hate stems from the underwhelming statistical output of those MVP seasons. You look at 2005, we're talking about a guy that averaged 15 points and 11 assists a game, 56% effective field goal percentage, so nothing just fully astounding by any means. And then you go 2006, the next year, he does level up, and that's a big reason why he did go back-to-back. Even though the team dropped 8 games in team record, this guy was just that much more dominant. Talking 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 10 assists, 58% effective field goal percentage. Again, think about the error as well and the efficiency that this guy was actually putting up as a 6'3", very, very slim guard who only really had the speed and nimble agility advantages to throw out. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't overly athletic as well. Couldn't get absurd levels of elevation over the top. And so what he was doing was absolutely exceptional, and one of the most selective offensive players as well, who just had some of the greatest hand-eye coordination you could ever even think of. When you talk about just basic skills, ball handling through traffic as well, being able to make and pick apart defenses with the most absurd accuracy of some of the tightest reads in the NBA. And then you talk about a guy that literally could score from everywhere on the field. And when we talk about the greatest passes of all time, Steve Nash is top 3 without a doubt. And in large part, it's because of his ability to actually create these passing windows. If you think back to some of the most the craziest and most audacious literal passes, guys that could literally fit the ball through the tightest of reads, most difficult, complex reads possible. Guys like Rajon Rondo fall into that sort of a line. And the thing is, what separates Steve Nash from a Rajon Rondo, from a Jason Kidd, even from talents that we've seen like Lonzo Ball, is this guy was literally a threat from everywhere on the floor. So he could manufacture passing windows as effortlessly as he wanted to because he brought that much gravity on the floor. And again, you might say, why was he more aggressive as a scorer? That's not really what the time and era called for at that point. And he was extremely selective with the shots that he took, but he was extremely polished. And if you look at some of the playoff games that this guy brought together, again, we're not going to talk about, postseason standards either because it is an MVP. We're talking about regular season standards. But as a scorer, you are hyper efficient, hyper polished at what you do. And it's not just regular season. When you know the efficiency is legit when you maintain that and boost the production in a postseason format. And that's what this guy did every single year. exceptional talent as well. I just don't think he'll ever get enough credit for at least what these MVP seasons were. And that's why when you look at basic stats and stuff, like that will never tell the full story. You have to look at, first off, you just look at aggregate impact. When you look in 2005, so that first MVP, when he first came to Phoenix, I'm pretty sure they had 62 wins and the number one seed. Nash was a plus 17 to Phoenix's offense per 100 possessions. That is like absurd. That was the best in the NBA by far, clearly, in that time, where offensive value and what you could bring as an offensive initiator was literally the most important perk that you could bring to an NBA team in that time when there was such suffocated space. And like when you talk about just being a transformative offensive player, like what he brought to the game offensively, like LeBron has never touched an offensive plus minus boost for a team like that. And so basically, when you factor in just as much of an offensive threat that he actually was as a scorer and passer, and like again, as a scorer, we're talking about the most efficient player in the NBA. In 2006, this guy was 19 points. The efficiency splits were absolutely unheard of from an off-the-dribble scorer. 51, 44, 92 splits. And he was a true shooting league leader that season as well at 6'3". And to be doing that in the mid-2000s era was absolutely unthinkable and transcendent for its time. He was a 6'3" guard. Again, slim, not much power or athleticism, but extremely selective, but extremely polished. And he could attack the rim with absolute will. 70% of his field goal percentage at the rim. That was a 98th percentile among guards that season as well. That was in 2006. And also to notch with all that offensive greatness, yes, he was definitely a weakness on the defensive end for sure. But in that era as well, you could probably hide your point guards on defense like a lot easier, especially again with how suffocated and the lack of skill around the league as well. It wasn't that important, especially when you had two of your bigs already pioneered around the blocks anyways defensively. And so Phoenix to be captain back to like, they were the first seed in 2005, 62 wins. That is extreme winning impact. And then second seed in 2006 as well. But then also just back-to-back number one offenses. That's what made this Phoenix team just so exceptional is their offense. And it was really, truly quarterbacked by Steve Nash, their offensive magician. One of the greatest offensive players the NBA has ever seen. No doubt did he deserve those two MVPs that he did receive. Now, moving on to our second guy. This is, again, I think underrated in terms of I don't think he got enough respect for just how amazing and exceptional this dude was in his MVP year. And I've got Kevin Garnett here. We obviously talk about the 2004 MVP season. 24 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 stocks a game. He led the league in total points scored. He was the field goals made average leader as well. So he put the ball in the hoop more times than than any other player in the league. Rebounding leader, all defensive first team. He was the leader in terms of the advanced stats. Leader in PER, win shares, box plus minus, and value over replacement player. So absolutely dominated the league at this point in time. Minnesota won 58 games, 59 games, I think, as well, as the number one seed in the West. And this is against teams like the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe, San Antonio in the midst of their dynasty, just coming off a championship too, mind you. And then that Sacramento squad that was still lurking around too. And to be the number one seed with the amount of talent around him in that year was pretty remarkable. Again, Minnesota, it wasn't like they were absolutely dudded around Kevin Garnett in terms of low levels of firepower. Sam Cassell had an exceptional season, 20 points a game, All-NBA second team that year. Latrell Sprewell as well, a premium third option around the league at that time. Obviously older, but still a very credible player. But they had injuries throughout that season too, so you have to keep in mind. And again, this is a team that ran away with the first seed. And this is with basically their all-star playing 28 games, Wally Zerbiak as well. Absolutely fell off a cliff production-wise. He was at 10 points a game as well. Far from the gravity shooter that he was years before. Michael Olowokandi played half the season as well in the regular season. Troy Hudson as well. A big spark in that 2003 season prior. I think he was averaging 14 a game in that role. Just played 29 games the season after. Fell off a cliff production-wise again. And like they're competing with way more talented cores in that Western Conference, and that's what makes this more or less a carry job when you talk about a number one seed. And then you talk about Kevin Garnett as a talent. And in this 2004 season, I'm not going to harp on it for too long, but genuinely, Kevin Garnett put a legitimate case, and this gets covered up in NBA history because we don't view many players to actually hold the title for best player in the world. But legitimately, in that 2004 season, Kevin Garnett was the best player in the world. He fully captained a Western Conference Finals run with that sort of a lineup in Minnesota as well. Again, we're not talking about the postseason, but what he did in that regular season as well is just the absolute peak of the most versatile big man in NBA history. That was the most dominant he ever peaked at that point in time as well. Talk about just in terms of just the spacing that he brought in that time as a high-level mid-range jump shooter, off the catch, off the pop, from the elbows, the post-up game, the matchup problem that he could present as well. Defensively, we're just talking about switching, rim coverage as well, exceptional just perimeter coverage against guards when he actually had to switch out on certain moments as well. Just exceptional timing and defensive intensity, and he brought that motor on the glass. Just an exceptional athlete with a exactly just the same paired and all-time elite all-time elite intensity and level of motor that he could always rev up on both ends of the floor every single night, and just a supreme skill set. Like, we talk about one of the best passing big men in NBA history, a guy who could handle the ball on the perimeter, act as a DHO hub to get his players just normal initial advantages out of pick and roll. And then he also provided all the versatility off the pop and off the roll with the athleticism that he brought. Exceptional player for that point in time as well, and he just brought so many different dimensions to the game, which actually captained a 59-win squad with overall pretty limited talent around him. And when we talk about impact, like we talked about Steve Nash being a plus 17 to Phoenix's offense, he might have, I think it stayed the same, plus 17 overall per 100 possessions when you factor in both ends of the floor. But Kevin Garnett, per 100 possessions, and this is the two-way impacts that he brought, he was a plus 19 points per 100 possessions, by far the best in the league for that year as well. Like, that's basically plus 20 points a game you were getting every single night with him on the floor, just absolute dominant, wreaking havoc every single night of value from so many different facets of the floor. Kevin Garnett, the best player in the world in 2004, in my opinion. And I have him as the second most underrated MVP of this century. But moving into our number 3 spot, a big notch down. I kind of only wanted to do this segment more to shout out Steve Nash and Kevin Garnett and what they actually did in their careers. But KD, again, compared to Nash and Garnett, not as impactful from a team standpoint. And I'll just say this, I was thinking about having 2015 Steph Curry, so Steph's first MVP season, which I think goes under the covers a little bit. And probably not as impactful from a team standpoint as that one, as Steph Curry's first MVP either. But the individual peak that Kevin Durant hit this year was exceptional. Again, second best player in the world. Obviously, LeBron James was in the heat of his prime, from a physical and athletic standpoint in Miami. So it was going to overtake the throne there. And I know LeBron James had a massive signature win in that regular season against KD. But for this OKC team, with Russell Westbrook playing just 46 games, he somehow still led a top 3 net rating squad in the NBA. And we know this OKC team held their hat on their defensive prowess, defensive intensity. But KD just floated their offense enough for them to still notch 59 wins in the second seed. Actually pretty reminiscent to what SGA kind of contributes to this Oklahoma City Thunder mold. Obviously not as great as what SGA was able to do last year from a team impact standpoint and a team success standpoint. But 59 wins is far from any joke. And offensively, they were just so limited, especially without Russ out of that lineup and what KD was able to do. Like, this might have been the peak of just scoring in general. 2014 Kevin Durant. Talk about just pure 3-level scoring mastery. And this is KD at his most athletic and his most explosive and his most aggressive form that we've ever seen him in. And he was just an insane matchup problem, just at the peak of his powers. Again, like I've been saying for, what the NBA has basically been saying for over a decade, maybe 15 years now, Kevin Durant's held the title for being the best on and off ball scorer of this entire generation, and that held no difference for this season itself. 32 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. And again, with that type of scoring aggression and the defensive attention on you specifically, and their lineups just so deterred of offensive talent, he's putting up splits of 50, 39, and 87, rounding to 56% effective field goal percentage. It's basically around where Shea was last year, not where Shea is at this year. Shea's taken his efficiency up another notch, but definitely just absolutely absurd what he was able to do in still a time period that obviously spacing was also still pretty poor at this point in time. And then in terms of just scoring consistency for this team, again, your ability to floor raise in the regular season is what gets you the MVP, not as much ceiling raising components. What you can do with bad talent around you, and again, when you're a top 2 seed, that's why he obviously won this award. But the floor raising and what he was able to do night to night in terms of the consistency, 47 30-point games this season for Kevin Durant, and he had 14 40 balls, and he was scoring at the rim at 77% in terms of field goal percentage. So absolutely absurd there. Again, at his athletic peak. He's always been pretty selective at the rim, but this is at his absolute athletic, physical, and aggression peak. 44% on mid-range looks, and he took over 500 that season itself. 41% on pull-up threes, and he was taking about 3 a game. So absolutely lethal off the dribble shot creation at this point in time. And he was the league leader in PER, win shares, and offensive box plus minus. So that tells you everything you need to know about the impact that KD brought at his individual intensity peak. And where he actually peaked, literally just in terms of just the headstrong, just psycho scoring aggression that he brought to the game. Now, that wraps up my 3 most underrated MVPs of this 21st century period. I mean, obviously the guys from recent years, they haven't had time to really settle in. I think you bring up Nash and you bring up Kevin Garnett. Nash, there's all this discourse because Shaq's always in the media barking off. You have a lot of Kobe fans, a ton of LeBron fans. But for Kevin Garnett in particular, I mean, that's kind of just fallen out in history as well. Like, a lot of people just don't look back on that 2004 MVP season. It was just a long time ago. But no one questioned when he won the award. Kevin Durant, pretty much the same as well. I don't think many people really question him winning the award as well, especially with voter fatigue. I mean, LeBron won it 4 out of 5 years before KD hoisted that trophy. But obviously those MVPs have kind of just more or less fallen out of the frame of like NBA fans' minds. But definitely 3 of the greatest and most dominant individual MVP seasons that we've seen this century. Now, I quickly want to touch on a topic that, a team that I've enjoyed watching recently, and it's the Cleveland Cavaliers. And ever since the James Harden trade and then the trades for Dennis Schröder and Keon Ellis, like, this team looks absolutely invigorated for a title. And I only say invigorated for a title, like, they might be the 3rd or 4th best contender in the NBA, full stop. So they're not in that top 2 zone with OKC and Denver. But the thing is, this team is playing in an Eastern Conference where they look like the most balanced, most versatile, most talented team in that conference itself. And we just saw them take Detroit to the absolute brim without Donovan Mitchell and without James Harden, with Dennis Schröder at the offensive ball handling helm. And just, we've seen the peak ceiling that Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, and even Thomas Bryant, like, their big man rotation can have. And their level of depth, like, again, when you talk about ball handling, it's not just James Harden and Donovan Mitchell. It's guys like Sam Merrill and what he can do in that starting unit too. I mean, Dennis Schröder, he actually can give you a decent enough floor as a rim pressure who can make basic table-setting decisions. It's what Craig Porter can actually offer to you as well with this new revitalized, just super explosive ball handling that he brings at the point guard position off the bench. So this is just the most offensive, versatile unit that you find in the Eastern Conference. And they can play with a level of defensive intensity that probably can let them get by against every single team out in the East as of right now. Detroit, more or less, is pretty one-sided. Obviously, defensively, they really nail the coffin in. But I think they're going to fall into a lot of trouble in terms of just the offensive skill surrounding Cade Cunningham in a 7-game series. When you are, like, offensively, Cade Cunningham is exceptional. But to be honest with you, if you're doing tiers in the NBA, I think Donovan Mitchell and James Harden are probably a notch above Cade Cunningham when you just talk about the overall skill set. The only reason why I probably would say they're on the same level of tier is the physical imposition that Cade brings out tonight. Like, he's genuinely huge. And the physical rim pressure that he can offer against any matchup is absurd. In terms of offensive skill, firepower, talent, versatility, your on and off ball scoring, just, table setting out of pick and roll, the gravity that you can bring as a pull-up shooter for both James Harden and Donovan Mitchell, that's what I would give them, possibly a hair above Cade Cunningham as literal just offensive players. And you have to go against two of those in a series. And obviously the post passing connection that they have between, guys like Assad, Tobias Harris, Jalen Duran, Paul Reed, Ron Holland, all those guys, like, it is valuable, but genuinely, like, when you're going in a 7-game series, it'll probably get pretty stale when you are going against what is relatively a pretty stout defensive rim protection line with Evan Mobley and obviously Jared Allen. I know in the postseason, Jared Allen can get physically outmatched, but he's been incredible recently and he's been battling his ass off on the rebounding glass. So I just think the Cavs look the best right now, and obviously it might be a bit of a honeymoon phase bringing James Harden in at this point in time with the offense looking so staggeringly efficient. But they're looking pretty good right now. They just came off a win against Brooklyn, but the reason why I have such belief in them too, it's not just the depth of talent and offensive firepower and their process, their quality of offense, it's also just the 1A, Donovan Mitchell. And when you look at the East, the contenders, the 1As going around, Jaylen Brown, Jalen Brunson, Cade Cunningham, Donovan Mitchell, and if you want to add Philly and Toronto in there, it's Tyrese Maxey. And then offensively, it is Brandon Ingram for Toronto, and you can shift space with Scotty as well, or Manuel quickly. To me, Donovan Mitchell might be the best out of that group. Heading into the season, I would have said Brunson, but Donovan Mitchell might be the best out of that group. If not, Cade Cunningham has been the best overall, especially what he can bring defensively. But your offensive juice as a 1A is the most important trait that you can bring, and this guy's brought it all year. In terms of floor raising for a team that has been pretty dulled with overall ball handling talent before the Harden trade went down with Garland's injuries, 28 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists on a mightily efficient 57% effective field goal percentage. This guy's been absolutely killing it right now. Obviously, he's had a bit of a lull stretch from the All-Star break, but no doubt he's going to be invigorated. In every postseason, he levels up the production to an absurd amount, and he still scores the ball very, very efficiently because he is rim pressure focused. But the shot quality of this guy is absurd. I've talked about it for a few weeks, but this guy's absolutely amazing. And as a 1A option, you have to believe in someone like him when you are going against guys like Cade Cunningham and Jalen Brunson. Mitchell's playoff experience at least matches anyone out in the Eastern Conference at that top tier, or if not outmatches that. He's been in the postseason basically every year of his career. And so what he's been doing this season is amazing. So again, the excellence of Donovan Mitchell is a big reason why I believe the Cavs are my favorite out East currently. But also just the last 15 games, and again, this doesn't include the Brooklyn Nets matchup, but they have a 121 offensive rating over the past 15 games. That's a long stretch of basketball. They've gone 11-4. Again, before today, I think they're 12. If you want to count 16-game stretch, they're now 12-4 in this stretch. Best in the league in terms of their literal offensive rating. Obviously, the Charlotte Hornets are pretty much at their neck there. But the offensive process that James Harden's been able to bring in terms of also just boosting their regular season floor more than what Darius Garland could. Again, I don't think they're going to reach the same ceiling that they could have reached if Darius Garland was actually healthy in this unit. But the floor is literally what you're banking on. It's what made OKC and Indiana, both of those teams, so mightily successful throughout the playoffs, is their night-to-night floor to avoid what variance can bring, like shot variance can bring night to night. And again, James Harden in this unit, and this is a stat I pulled yesterday, again, not including today's matchup against Brooklyn, but he's been a plus 10 to Cleveland's offense per 100 possessions, according to Clean the Glass. That is exceptional right now, as well as just a shoe-in fit. They surround him with guys that perfectly complement what he can do as one of the best table setters the game has ever seen. Jarrett Allen, spoken about him before, 19 points and 10 rebounds over his last 15 games. Like, he's been absolutely killing it with activity as well and just playing off of the new set of guards that they have between Schröder and James Harden, and he's attacking the glass so much more. I think Tim Legler pointed it out in the Detroit broadcast, but you literally don't need to run actions for Jarrett Allen. he's just always going to find his way to actually contribute and produce on the margins because plays with so much intensity in the regular season. You've got to hope that maintains in the postseason, obviously. But year by year, this guy's getting more experience as well as a star level center in this league. Obviously, Keon Ellis has been pretty average from offensively beyond the 3-point line. But what Dennis and Keon can bring as a point of attack defensive line fit off the bench, you got to really enjoy watching that. And they've just fully shifted the defensive dynamic of this team as they project to the postseason. Again, you trade away Darius Garland, you trade away DeAndre Hunter, and you bring back Keon Ellis and Dennis Schröder. Makes a world of difference in terms of just hassling players with ball pressure at the point of attack. And again, that raises your night-to-night floor. That raises your margin because you're just making players more and more uncomfortable throughout 7-game series. Those guys are just incredible competitors. Absolutely love this team. And then again, Sam Merrill, amazing player as well. Don't need to shout him out too much. But Jalen Tyson, one of the best role players going around right now. One of the best connective pieces on the defensive end, on the perimeter. But also, again, offensively, what this guy's doing. 13 points, 5 rebounds, and he's making 46% of his threes. One of the best role players in basketball, full stop. So basically, after that rant, this Cavs team is my favorite team out east. Just wanted to cement that. We've seen them just play some absolutely exceptional basketball recently. And I think from their star talent to their overall balanced versatility on both ends of the floor as well, the different looks that they can throw out, that they can throw out Mobley at the 5 units, and he's going to have his way against most centers as well. I just think the gravity that also Evan Mobley can bring as a vertical spacer, as a popper, he was so confident in that Detroit game as well from beyond the arc. So in terms of just the versatility of the units that they can run, but also just the level of depth that they have, the coaching from Kenny Atkinson, I mean, this team, to me, just poses as the biggest threat to anyone in the Eastern Conference in terms of, again, surviving 4 rounds of the playoffs. Now, I've spoken about how, New York might actually be a more playoff resilient team than a team like Detroit. But if Detroit and New York were to play in a playoff series, Detroit would absolutely steal New York's lunch money and throw them probably down the drain to nearly questioning if they go to a rebuilding stage. But obviously, even New York's got a bit more offensive skill and just overall versatility as a unit than Detroit, and that makes them pretty equal contenders in my eyes. But Cleveland just outmatches what New York can do in terms of the versatility when you throw in the defensive anchorage that they have with their rim protection units. And then against a team like Detroit, we're just talking leaps and bounds of a difference in terms of just your offensive firepower, which I believe raises your floor so much. And in a postseason where defense is really engaged, you don't know what the coaching of Mike Brown's going to look like for New York come postseason time. I just think Cleveland look like the best out east. And after the trades, after they cement and get even more momentum and chemistry behind them, Max Strus is going to come back too. This team is going to look like an absolute monster. And they'll probably return as the 3rd best contender in the NBA full stop, like what I had them as before the season started. Now, I appreciate you guys for listening to that one. I'm going to come back with another episode with another fun topic in a few days' time. I appreciate you guys for tuning into that one, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.